Take me by my hand, take me by my hand, take me by my hand and lead me on. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning. Boy, that was rocking. Thank you. Happy Sunday. I actually have a couple other announcements before I move into my lesson. I want to announce that we're going to have two wonderful guest speakers, or three actually, altogether. Next Sunday, Belinda Lightheart, our Reverend intern, is going to be speaking with us, and she's going to be speaking about Unity's 5 basic principles, ancient wisdom, and new thought. And it's going to be a great lesson. I'm actually looking forward to watching the videos because I'm going to be on vacation. And letting Spirit lead me on vacation. I think that's probably a good plan. And then the week after that, we have the wonderful Dr. Rich Massey, who's going to be speaking for us. And he's an amazing, wonderful healer. Not just a doctor, but a healer. You can tell the difference. And also his lovely wife, Meridian, is going to be here with us. And she's going to be leading our meditation on Sunday. So don't miss these guys. We heard them at the What If It Really Works interview. And, oh, man. Just beautiful spiritual lights, and they've got some really deep wisdom to share with us. So thank you for being here today. So thank you. Be sure to give them a big hug afterwards as well. So I have a story that I like to tell. It's a story of an old man, a young boy, and a donkey. Maybe you've heard this one, but I love telling this story. There was an old wise man and a young boy, novice that was going along on a pilgrimage. And they had a donkey, and so they were going along, and as they were going along, they were both riding, the old man started off riding on the donkey, and as they're riding along, they go through this little village. As they go through the village, all the villagers look at this, and they see this, and the old man's riding on the donkey, and the young boy is walking behind, and they think, oh my gosh, isn't that awful? This old man is making this poor young boy walk, and, riding the donkey. And so they hear this and they kind of go, oh, well, maybe they're right. Maybe we need to do something different here. So the old man gets off of the donkey and puts the young boy up on the donkey, and then they're riding along. The young boy's riding along, and the old man is walking behind. And they go through another village. And these villagers say, can you believe that? That young boy making that old man walk behind this donkey. I can't believe they would do that. That's just horrible. And they thought about that, and they thought, well, maybe they're right. And so they decided that they would both ride on the donkey. And so they both get on the donkey, and they're riding along, and they go through another town. And this town, the people are saying, I cannot believe that poor donkey, having both of those people riding on him, they're just so cruel to this poor old donkey. And so they thought about that, and they reflected on it a little bit, and they said, well, maybe they're right. Maybe we need to listen to that. And so they decided they were going to carry the donkey. So the old man and the little boy are walking along carrying this donkey, and they walk across this really narrow, slippery bridge. And as they're walking along, they slip, and the donkey goes over into the river and drowns. And the moral of the story is, if you listen to everybody else's opinion, you're going to lose your donkey. We have so many different voices that are going on, not only out here in the world, but in our own heads. We have these committees that go on. You know what I'm talking about? You know the committee? That are always having these different views and different ideas and different ways of seeing and looking at things. And Herb Goldberg says that the struggle to learn to listen and respect our own intuitive inner promptings is the greatest challenge of all. But I think it's also one of the greatest blessings. And it's also one of the most important, I think, spiritual practices and lessons that we can learn in our lives. In the Keep a True Lent, Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of Unity, said, man is never without a guide, no matter how loudly he may be crying for leading. There is always at hand a sure torchbearer, if he will but follow the light. It is too simple and too easy. You know, and I was thinking about this idea, and when I was meditating on what I was going to speak on, I really got that I wanted to talk about one of our core values, which is Spirit-led. This community is Spirit-led. I absolutely know that. And in many ways, I do know that I'm, a lot of ways, speaking to the choir for a lot of folks, because I know that many of you really do practice listening to your intuition and listening to your guidance. And I also know that we sometimes don't listen to that, and we'll talk more about that as we go along as well. But I thought about this, and I was thinking about one of the things that I have found so wonderful in our world today that can be really absolutely amazing is our new technology of GPS. You know, GPS. GPS stands for Global Positioning System, but in the spiritual sense, it actually stands for our God Possibility System. And it really has to do with our God position. Where are we in connection and relationship with the divine? And are we listening to the directions that we're being given? We're always being given directions. One of my teachers was Ram Dass, and he tells this wonderful story about going to his guru and saying one day that he felt he had to leave his ashram and couldn't follow him anymore. And as he explained to him what was going on, his teacher said, I see too many inconsistencies in what you're teaching people, what you're saying to people. And what he said was, his teacher said, you know, it's like this. When I see someone who is going down the road and they're about to fall in the ditch on the right-hand side, I say go left. And if I see someone who's walking down the road and they're about to fall in the ditch on the left-hand side, I say go right. And so we're always getting this kind of guidance, believe it or not. We're always getting some way of helping us to move down our spiritual path in a way that will lead us into a greater experience of our unique divine nature. That's where our paths ultimately are going, is a greater awakening to our unique divine nature. And so the question really comes then, how do we really listen to this voice of Spirit, the Christ, our divine nature, our authentic self? How do we really listen to that more? In Psalms 25:9, it says, the meek will he guide in judgment, and the meek will he teach his way. So meek, really, we've kind of listened to that word meek sometimes, and I know sometimes when we've tried to talk about this idea of meekness, the word meek, oftentimes we've looked at that and we kind of think, well, that means that we're supposed to be doormats. And that's not what it means at all. The word meek simply means open. It means receptive. It means being teachable. It means being leadable, for that matter. That we have to be open to allowing ourselves to be affected by the guidance that we're receiving. And so when he's talking about the meek, he's saying when you're open in that space, you are being guided. You will be guided. And the way is actually shown. And so our work is really letting go of the need to, in some ways, control our inner voice. We have lots of different voices, and we sometimes try to control those inner voices. Sometimes we listen to those inner voices. And, you know, we are oftentimes in that committee, or what we sometimes call the monkey mind. I love saw a bumper sticker some years ago. I'm sure many of you have seen it, and it really has. It says, "Meditation. It's not what you think." What a true statement! It's not what you think. Well, and here's the thing: is I'm realizing though, in order for us to really hear our inner guidance, meditation is, I believe, the only real tool. I won't say just a tool, but it's the only real tool to develop more of that. It's not necessarily stopping our thinking. I don't think we can really do that. I really don't. I don't think you stop your thinking. But it really is a way of helping you to understand that you are not your thinking. Now, that seems like it might be counter to what we teach in Unity, because we say our thoughts create our experiences. I do know that's true. Our thoughts do. When we hold a particular thought with energy, with emotions, we are participating in creating whatever it is that we're holding in our thoughts and our thinking. But the reality is that's not who we are. That you and I are much more than our thoughts. We are actually a part of the very creative process that thoughts, that does produce, that does create, that does attract. And so we're more than just the thoughts themselves. And part of our work is to learn to notice our thoughts, be observant of them, be conscious of them, be aware of them, but not be them. Do you understand what I'm saying? I have thoughts, but I'm not my thoughts. And that's one of the places where we get stuck a lot of times, especially in listening to our guidance, because we think things, and we think because we think it that it must be true. You know, whatever I think obviously has got to be true because it's my thoughts, right? And that's our ego consciousness. Interestingly enough, that's what ego really is. An ego consciousness, our ego consciousness, is our thoughts about who we are. It is a conception of who we are. And we all have conceptions of, so many things. But the conceptions we have are not necessarily what really is. Now, we can have conceptions, we can have thoughts that actually reflect who we are. But the moment that we believe that it's the thoughts that we are, we're actually stepping into identifying with that, and then we're stepping out of a knowing of our essence, a knowing of who we are. And we try to create, in Unity, one of the ways that we talk about meditation and really listening to our guidance is through the silence. And we try to create silence, and we think that somehow silence means that there's no sound, that there's no noise. And I'm going to suggest to you that's a misunderstanding as well. Now, don't get me wrong, moving into a place that is really quiet and still can be very helpful. And personally, I love going out into the woods and listening to the sounds of the birds, listening to the sounds of the trees, listening to the sounds of water running. I'm looking forward to that, as a matter of fact. I love it. It does help me to move back into a place of really connection. And it does help to still those thoughts. And that's important and that's valuable. And you can still them to a certain extent. But the moment you think that you have to let them go, that's your ego mind actually trying to wrestle with whatever's going on. And so you want to not move into a place of trying to resist your thoughts, but simply notice them and be aware of them and conscious of them. And just allowing the stillness to be there. It's not quite total quiet. It's really just simply noticing and observing and witnessing. It's not total stillness either. It's an immersion and a disidentification with the committee, with the voices, with the monkey mind. And so meek is letting go of the control of what is. To be meek is simply to let go of the need to control what is. And when you do that, in Psalms 31:3 it says, "For thou art my rock and my fortress. Therefore, for thy name's sake, lead me and guide me. Pull me out of the net that they have laid privily for me. For thou art my strength, and into thine hand I commit my spirit. Thou hast redeemed me, O Lord, God of truth." So I think about this verse, and name metaphysically means my nature, my character, my divine qualities, you might say. And interestingly enough, it says, O God. Do you guys know that the word God ultimately was not in the original Bible? It was never there. It's actually a German word that came around, I think in the 1300s, as I recall. And the word actually is gut. Gut. Anybody speak German? Good. And so when we say the word God, what we're saying is good. And you might say that that is truly the nature and the qualities and the characteristics of the divine. And it really is our nature and our qualities and our characteristics. Good. Another term that's used, I think, in Eastern, more Hindu understandings, they have an understanding of God they call Brahman. And Brahman really means absolute benevolence. I love that term, benevolence. It's not just good, but it is good desires and intention and wishes and well-being is another term that I love. Well-being. And so when we look at these verses, listen to this understanding from a place of our divine well-being is there for us. For that is our rock, our fortress. It is therefore the qualities and characteristics of that divine nature of benevolence. That's the essence of who and what you are. Do you realize that? You truly are created in the image and the likeness of divine benevolence. Take that in a second. Are you meek enough to accept that you are an expression of divine benevolence? That's how you've been created. That's what your nature is. He talks about the nets that have tried to ensnare me. I like that idea also, interestingly enough. To me, that's those voices again, that monkey mind. The net that tries to ensnare us are those ideas and belief systems that are thoughts, that we are our thoughts, that we are our belief systems, that we are all of those things that go on in our consciousness. Those nets, they're not necessarily out there, though they show up out there as a result of what goes on in here, don't they? And so this interpretation is something, we think that it's something that's said and done out here to harm us in some way or connect us or keep us stuck. That in itself, that belief system, is one of the nets. Think about it. This belief that it's something out there that's holding us back from our well-being. This belief that somehow someone has our good. And they're holding it from us. And they're not letting us get to it or not letting us have it or taking it away from us. That's one of the nets, the belief system that snares our consciousness and keeps us stuck. It keeps us stuck in our own pain and suffering. Are we meek enough to acknowledge that the snares are really inside of us? And those belief systems that say that someone out here is holding our good from us is one of the ones that we need to be willing to release and let go of. And move into an understanding that there is a divine benevolence that's working in and through us, and realign ourselves with this trusting of that process and that creative power that works with us. And when we commit ourselves to that, tuning out the other voices, listening and hearing and accepting the truth of who and what we are, regardless of what seems to be going on out here. Creating in the image and likeness of the divine, we are uniquely divine. And it's letting go of all the limiting programmings about lack and limitation and loss and all of those things that we believe we are. And tuning into that awareness of our true nature, our true divine benevolence. And listening from that space, listening to possibilities of a greater expression of our divine nature. And we'll get noticing of different motions and flashes of insight and flashes of awareness. We'll get little things. We don't necessarily get absolute 100% fullness of divine knowledge all at once. I have a feeling we would kind of burn up like a resistor that was overloaded with electricity if we really tried to do that. I think we get what we need as we need it when we need it. And we have a tendency to think that because we're not getting these cosmic kinds of blown mind experiences that we're not being guided. But I'm going to suggest to you sometimes that spiritual guidance is just simply an intuition of turn here, go there, say this, smile. You understand? So we think we have to have that full-blown knowledge, but that in a way kind of gets us in the way of our truly being open to experiencing our divine nature. See, I'm convinced that we have the ability to know the whole mind of God. I really do. I think that and there are aspects of us that mind is, you see, because there's nothing within God mind, ultimately, that is hidden from us. Do you realize that? Ultimately, there's no hiding in spirit. Spirit doesn't hide the truth. If he does, he hides it in us. And we're having trouble finding it because we're looking out there for it. Does that make sense? But in this form that we're in right now, we try to experience if we try to experience all that God is and all that God has for us, I think we may find ourselves having a little challenge functioning in some ways. I'm not sure that really is what we need. I think what we need to experience is what is going on for us in this world. I know that may seem like you want to transcend all of this. But interestingly enough, you don't transcend this by not being in this. Do you understand what I'm saying? We don't transcend the world by trying to escape from the world. We transcend the world by being fully in the world. By being fully in the world with all that we're being called to do and be. We're being called to move into another level of our unique divine nature. Carl Jung said this. He said, the greatest and most important problems in life are all, in a certain sense, insoluble. They can never be solved, but only outgrown. Let me say that again, because that's just a really important understanding. They can never be solved. They can only be outgrown. So think about what problems you are seeing in your life today. The problem, the big one. Let's look at the big problem. I know maybe you don't have a big problem. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe you've kind of grown beyond big problems, and that's fine. But think about what might come up for you as big problem. And just be aware that the problem ultimately is not solvable. It's not solvable at the level of consciousness that you're trying to solve it at. If it were, you would have already solved it. You follow me? If you really had moved into another level of awareness, it wouldn't be a problem for you anymore. In fact, it may be the same circumstance and situation, and it will no longer be a problem. You following this? Yeah. So what he's saying is that we have to grow to the place where we no longer see it as a problem. In Ho'oponopono, one of the things that they teach us is that problems are all memories. They're actually a part of our programming. Our programming is to see a situation or circumstance as a problem. And one of the ways that we overcome problems is by choosing to recognize that there's something within us that is generating it as a problem for us. And if we can change how we look at it and see it, it actually becomes something different. It perhaps becomes an opportunity for greater transformation of our divine nature. You know, Albert Einstein, I said this last week, I believe it was, he says, you can't solve a problem on the same level of thinking that created the problem in the first place. And that's what we have a tendency to do. When you have a problem, you're actually trying to solve it with the same kind of thinking that's actually generating the problem in the first place. And so listening to guidance is actually listening to a higher level of our consciousness that is more directly in tune with our divine mind, with our divine nature. Listening and hearing. You see, one of the ways I'm kind of getting this recently in some of my meditations. You know, the moment that I try to fix something, it occurs to me that that's not coming from Spirit. When I'm trying to fix something, I'm trying to make it be different than what it is. That's actually simply resistance to what is. And that doesn't come from the heart and mind of Spirit. That comes from our belief system that says, this is not the way I want it. This is not the way I believe it should be. And the moment we're in that kind of energy, we're actually coming from our ego consciousness. It's a good way of really discerning whether we're coming from guidance or whether we're coming from ego. Am I trying to fix? Who are you trying to fix in your life? Maybe it's yourself. And what if you're really not broken? What if you really are simply on a beautiful spiritual journey? And there's all these wonderful adventures that you're getting this amazing opportunity to participate in. Charles Fillmore in Keep a True Lamp says, there are two ways to get understanding. One is to follow the guidance of Spirit that dwells within, and the other is to go blindly ahead and learn by hard experience. It's a choice. We have that choice. And I can assure you, one of the best ways to learn how to listen to your guidance is to hear guidance and not follow guidance. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? We've done it. We all do it. I do it. It's like, yeah, but I want to do this. And it doesn't mean necessarily that's going to result in a broken foot. Doesn't mean that. It just means that the moment that we move into an experience that is challenging, that we're given guidance in that moment for what is the next best thing for us, even in that experience, whatever that experience might be. And so here's 5 things that you can look at to help get a greater sense of your unique divine nature and guidance. 1, don't get frustrated. Patience. You may not always get guidance in the moment that you think you want guidance. Interestingly enough, you may find that you get guidance in ways that, in times that you had asked for a week ago or a month ago. And interestingly enough, if you get frustrated, you actually block the guidance. And so one of the ways that you can really tune into guidance is just really move into that energy and awareness that you are one with divine mind and that you are guided as you need to be guided in that moment. And don't allow yourself to try and strive for it. Just be open to it. Meek, right? Openness. So being open is one of the keys to listening and hearing divine guidance. 2, be open to spiritual guidance in any form. We have a tendency to get real prescriptive in how we think guidance is supposed to come. But you may find that as you move into an awareness of guidance, here's a little guidance that I received for me, and I think it might be valuable for you. Spirit never argues. If there's an argument, it's not spiritual guidance. Spirit speaks the truth, and when you hear it, it's a knowing. It's a knowing. And so experiment with simply following that. Follow that knowingness and be open to spiritual guidance in whatever form it comes, and when you know it's true, follow it. When you feel it, you know it. And if there's this debate going on, that's your ego. Not bad, don't get me wrong. You may get some amazing insights out of that, even for that matter. And Spirit will lead you from that point. Okay, now that you're done listening to that, here's what is. Here's truth. You follow me? Validate your successes. When you hear guidance and you follow it and you experience the good, the benevolence, the blessings from that, pay attention. Notice it and write it down. Because I can tell you there's a part of your mind that will try to talk you out of that. It's right. It's true, isn't it? You know what I'm talking about. When miracles happen, make sure you pay attention to the miracles. When the good is unfolding, really acknowledge that and celebrate it for that matter, and make sure you capture it in some way that your mind can remember it, because the ego mind likes to fuzz all that stuff. It likes to make you believe that, oh, did that really happen? Well, yeah, it did really happen, and it happened as you experienced it. But we have a tendency then, our ego mind likes to discount it and say, oh, that was just, I always say, people have these amazing experiences, and I say, oh, that's just coincidence. I mean, there are no coincidences. Ultimately, there's something greater at work. And then, here's another way that you can really develop your guidance. Try not following your guidance. And just notice. It's an interesting experiment. I've done it numerous times, consciously and unconsciously. And I can tell you that following my guidance works a whole lot better for me. When I do it, I'm in a place where life really works well. In the wonderful book, The Eye of the Storm, Dr. Gary Simmons says, nothing and no one is ultimately against you. In a very real sense, we need to develop an understanding and a consciousness of the term is pronoia. You ever heard that term before? I was trying to look up who coined that phrase, and I couldn't find it this morning. But pronoia. Pronoia is this amazing belief that the universe is conspiring in your favor. Kind of opposite of paranoia. So we need to develop a consciousness of pronoia. And when we see things rightly and we see that there's something going on, recognize that it's there to bring us into a greater fulfillment of our own unique divine nature. Course in Miracles says this: being afraid seems to be involuntary, something beyond our control. Yet I have said already that only constructive acts should be involuntary. My control can take over everything that does not matter, while my guidance can direct everything that does, if you so choose. Fear cannot be controlled by me, but it can be self-controlled. Fear prevents me from giving you my control. The presence of fear shows that you have raised body thoughts to the level of the mind. This removes them from my control and makes you feel personally responsible for them. And this is an obvious confusion of levels. Intuition is given only to him who has undergone long preparation to receive it. So practice is a part of allowing yourself to be in tune with your intuition. One of my teachers in musical form, David Roth, has a wonderful song called Practice Makes Progress. And I love that. So stay prayed up, meditate regularly, observe your thoughts, listen to what you know is true, and then act on it. And in the closing, in the words of Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, it is only with the heart that one sees rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye. Have fun learning and growing in your own divine, spirit-led journey. Have fun with it. Let it be something that's playful. And you'll be amazed. In fact, you'll be amazed how playful spirit can be. Let's move into our meditation time. And now we move into that place of stillness, silence. And we just allow our thoughts to flow, whatever they may be, and take a moment now to just simply notice what thoughts are rolling through your mind. And just notice and affirm and see, I have thoughts, but I am not my thoughts. as you are observing, notice not only your thoughts, but notice any feelings or emotions that arise, and just be aware. And notice I have emotions, but I'm not my emotions. And as we move into stillness, the body likes to give us all kinds of interesting signals and sensations. And just notice any sensations that arise. And just know that I have sensations, but I am not my senses. I have a body, but I am not my body. And the mind likes to assign us to different roles and identities of teacher, mother, father, lawyer, doctor, Indian chief. All of these roles are just the mind playing games. And there are functions, and we have roles, but we are not our roles. We are so much more. I have roles, but I am not my roles. I am. Just listen to that still small voice that speaks the truth of our unique divine nature. And it often sounds and feels like simply, I am. I am. I am one with the all-knowing mind of God. And I know. I remember. I remember who I truly am. I know. I'm one with the all-knowing mind of Christ. I know, I remember, I understand. Breathe that in and just be open. I am one with the all-knowing mind of God. I know, I remember, I understand, and I express my unique divine nature. Breathe that in. In the silence. In the silence. Take a nice deep breath now and let a feeling, an energy of gratitude come into your consciousness, your heart, your thoughts, knowing that you have the guidance of Spirit. And you are being led in wise and right ways. Take another nice deep breath. Begin to move around a little and stretch a little bit. Take another nice deep breath, and when you're ready, gently open your eyes and be present here and now.